Apple takes another step towards improving the lives of diabetics by incorporating glucose monitoring into the Apple Watch. With newly secured FDA approval, Apellis sets its sights on curing a common form of blindness. And Mineralys raises $192 million to fight hypertension globally. These are the stories we'll be covering on This Week in Healthcare Tech. Hello, and welcome to This Week in Healthcare Tech, where every week we bring you the hardest hitting news from the intersection of healthcare and technology. First up, there have been rumors that Apple was working on a way of incorporating glucose monitoring into their popular Apple Watch. Though information has been hard to come by, it seems that they were aiming to develop a non-invasive way of measuring blood glucose levels that doesn't require diabetics to prick themselves. Well, we can all stop speculating because those rumors have now been confirmed. According to journalist Mark Gurman, Apple has been conducting clinical trials of their infrared spectroscopy technology, which allegedly uses light beamed through the skin to assess blood glucose levels. Though it's still in the proof of concept stage and will require much more testing, Apple's approach could substantially ease the burden of those managing diabetes while reducing the likelihood of diabetes-related complications like blindness. Speaking of blindness, more than 1 million people in the US suffer from a progressive, irreversible form of vision loss known as geographic atrophy. Its name comes from the fact that it causes lesions to form in the eye which resemble maps when examined under a microscope. For our next story, Apellis Pharmaceuticals has developed a drug for geographic atrophy called Syfovre, and the FDA just approved it. Despite this, questions remain. In early testing, Syfovre was able to stop the progression of the disease but was unable to halt vision loss in patients. Syfovre can also cause inflammation and an increased risk of infection. Though many eye doctors are optimistic about the drug and its potential, others are unconvinced, and it remains to be seen how Apellis will address their concerns. Finally, in early February, drug maker Mineralys announced an IPO for just shy of $200 million. Their aim is to create a drug to treat hypertension, which, according to the World Heart Federation, affects over 1 billion people worldwide and is the single greatest risk factor for death. Hypertension is the medical term for blood pressure that is high enough to be dangerous. Because it doesn't produce symptoms on its own, it is difficult to diagnose and treat. Mineralys is focused on developing a drug called MLS-101 to reduce hypertension-related fatalities. MLS-101 is what's known as an aldosterone synthase inhibitor because it controls the hormone aldosterone, which is released by the kidneys and influences blood pressure. Because the link between elevated aldosterone levels and runaway hypertension is well established, aldosterone has long been of interest to drug makers. There are a number of other companies working on aldosterone synthase inhibitors and others working on hypertension treatments that rely on different mechanisms as well. That's it for this episode. Tune into This Week in Healthcare Tech next week for the latest news, and don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining me, and until next time.